everyone. I'm Elaine Ficar, and I'm today's guest host, filling in for my friend Carmen Nieves. I want to welcome you to another episode of Connecticut at Your Service, which comes to you live every Tuesday on Soundview TV here in Stratford. Our goal with this show is to introduce you to Connecticut leaders who will educate, entertain, and empower you through the shared stories of their service to the Connecticut community. Our guest this evening is Frederick Welk, a Community Economic Development Fund business advisor who serves as Director of Education and Communications for CEDF. Before joining the organization in 2013, he spent more than 30 years in specialty retailing and franchise development, operating his own company for 23 years. As an adjunct lecturer for Connecticut State Community Colleges, he has taught a variety of entrepreneurship, marketing, and accounting application courses. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
You have quite an interesting background, and I wanted to just start with, if you could just give us like the 60-second soundbite, really, of your career and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I was involved in specialty retail for my whole career. Back in the days when we actually had regional shopping malls, and that was the place that everyone went to. But a family member had a business selling cutlery in stores in shopping malls, and over time the company built itself up to 213 stores before, fortunes changed and the economy and so forth. And I ended up making a transition to doing some consulting in franchise development with an individual who had worked with me over the years. And one of the clients was a particular Midwest-based beauty chain, which was kind of innovating a concept of small salons with a beauty supply store in a regional shopping malls that sold a whole lot of shampoo and conditioner and hair care products. And ultimately, we built them up to about 90 locations, including a group of company stores, but mostly franchisees. And the founders had realized they'd done very well by themselves, and they sold it off to a Regis Corporation, which happens to be the world's largest salon chain. And we did some work for Regis over the years, and throughout this whole process, we had hung on to some stores as an investment, and I managed those stores as the general manager of a small group of stores, and retained those, and then ultimately swapped some markets with Regis, ended up with stores in Cleveland, Ohio for a time, and then in Syracuse, New York, and 23 years seemed to go by in a hurry. During that time, the whole industry changed. The product distribution channels, which is very important in that industry, changed quite a bit to the detriment of the retail specialty concept, actually. And then something came along called the internet. Have you heard of that? Yeah, and that kind of reduced the shopping levels in regional malls, and then ultimately it was time to move on to something else.
So you moved on, and is that how you got to CEDF?
Yeah, that brought me to the door ultimately of a Community Economic Development Fund, and I joined them as a business advisor in 2013, and actually still have some clients that have been with us through that whole journey. There's some very good clients that I'm very proud to have been a business advisor for that length of time. Took on some additional responsibilities in 2017, as you mentioned, as a director of business education and communications.
Right. And that's your current position there, but obviously you also, as I mentioned in your bio, you also do some lecturing in Connecticut State Community Colleges.
Yeah,
College.
Right.
So how do you inspire the next group of entrepreneurs?
Well, I could only hope to inspire, but that story was interesting because I was asked to teach a course which was called Launch a Business. There was an opening, kind of an emergency filling of an opening at Gateway Community College back in 2020. And I pitched in, and we did kind of a consortium course with Central Connecticut and also with the University of Bridgeport, combining three classes, if you will, different levels, graduate students and undergraduates. And they worked on creating what you'd call model businesses over a very short 7-week course period, and then doing a presentation at the end as the capstone. And about a week or 10 days later, this thing called COVID happened, and the whole world shut down, and that was kind of a lucky thing that we had a 7-week course, because otherwise...
They wouldn't have been able to finish their project.
Exactly.
So once we got past all of that, but I'm sure you've probably seen over your time working at CEDF, you mentioned that you had some of your own business relationships that have, continued to flourish. Can you just walk us through what a potential business startup would go through
Sure.
when they approach CEDF?
Well, perhaps obviously, or perhaps not, people come to us because they're in need of funding. And we are a community lender. Maybe I should explain kind of how that works in the marketplace, because the first thought that most people have is go to the local bank and get a business loan. Well, the difficulty is that in our society, banks are highly regulated institutions for the protection of the stakeholders, that is the depositors and the shareholders, and it's necessary to have some strict regulations so they don't take unnecessary risk. Well, even 31 years ago, when CEDF was brought into existence by an act of the state legislature, and we're not a state agency, we're not anything but an independent nonprofit 501c3. But even back then, it was difficult for small businesses to get financing. And so the concept was really leading what was going on at the federal level, putting in place different institutions that would be able to more properly cater to small businesses and meet their needs. And one of them is the program through the U.S. Treasury called Community Development Financial Institutions. So that is a certification that we hold for our organization. What that means is that we have an obligation to do the majority of our loans to low and moderate income business owners and in underserved communities. And because of our origins through the state, we also focus on the towns in Connecticut that are in greatest need of economic development. The state publishes lists that change from time to time, but by and large, we put most of our emphasis on those particular communities, even though we can loan statewide under other qualifications.
Right. So how does someone actually get the background and the training to be able to start their own business, though, so that they get to the point where they could apply for funding? Most of the time, it does take someone actually having a business plan, a business that's up and running, or?
Well, it can happen both ways. We certainly provide a lot of educational resources to help out with that, and we hope that everyone will utilize our WeTeachSuccess.org dedicated website, which has a lot of material on there for a business that's in the creation stage. But we're very fortunate here in Connecticut that there are a lot of organizations that are prepared to provide business support, both to emerging businesses, that is, a startup, or a very young business, or one that's already been on its feet for quite a while, but may have some specialized needs for advising. So, yeah, there is a necessity for a business plan, and you have to think about it being not just for the purposes of getting a loan. You're not going to do it just for the lender. You need to do it for yourself as a business owner, so you can stay on the rails and make sure that you've got a roadmap for how to get to the objectives that you've set.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of those? You mentioned your website, WeTeachSuccess.org.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about what are the resources that you have there?
Sure.
And how those can help fledgling entrepreneurs get a start?
Certainly.
So that they're coming to the CEDF with enough of a business plan, enough of even starting their own business. So
well, certainly.
This track record.
Yeah, and it's we feel like it's a rich resource that we've put together. We have over 200 on-demand webinars available, and that's kind of the unintended benefit of COVID, if you will, that everyone in the world knows how to use Zoom, it seems. And so a lot of material there available in management, marketing, and finance there to replay on demand, hour-long programs. It's all free. And then additionally, we have other resources. We have our podcast series. We have published articles there. We also have free courses available. And in fact, we have a business plan course. Has a remarkable similarity to the business plan course that I taught at Gateway Community College, and still do. We'll have that up again this fall. So the fact that someone knows that they don't know it all is really an important realization for a prospective or an existing business owner, and I guess we feel a little saddened from time to time that existing business owners don't necessarily make full use of the resources because, well, honestly, they're so busy just doing what they have to do to kind of keep the wheels turning in their business.
Right. What do you see as the biggest challenge for people, especially in low and moderate income areas, to starting their own businesses, though?
Well, the thing that I've observed is that people have a, let's say, a mindset that, it can't be done, I can't learn it, I can't accumulate the resources because of my situation, I'm not going to be able to get a loan, etc. And in fact, I think in our society we've developed an assumption that there's a problem for small businesses with access to capital. And I don't think that's phrased correctly. I think the true problem is preparation for access to capital. Because if a prospective business owner does put together a business plan that has, the right elements in it, and there's nothing magic about the format, honestly, or the way it's organized, but it needs to cover all the subjects that a lender is going to ask about and that they should have been thinking about. And then beyond that, the financial projections and the financial numbers are a terribly important thing to be sure that you're not missing something and there's not a major expense that's going to abruptly cause you to run out of cash after the fourth month. So I would say that having that business plan and the financial projections is the crucial thing. And it's a taller mountain to climb when you're a startup, honestly, but it can be done, and it's done all the time. About a quarter of our loans are to startups or very young businesses.
And what is the usual? Do you find certain patterns in kinds of businesses that people want to start, or are there trends that everyone wants to try to follow, or?
Well, we loan across all industries, and you would imagine that it might be isolated to what we would call retail businesses or some such, but that's not true. If I had to characterize it, I would say that CEDF, a community lender, we deal with Main Street businesses, because those that are looking for, let's call it a tech startup, if you will, they're going to run into trouble using what we'd call debt capital, that is loans, because once you get a loan, you have to start paying it back. And if you don't have revenue right away in the business, and if it's not a predictable stream of revenue that you're going to have in a very short amount of time, well, the lender's not going to be very excited about supporting that. You're going to need something like equity, which is an investor, a partner in your business, who is going to give you what we would term patient capital. And that means that they're not going to need a return on their investment just immediately, because they know that the business idea has to grow and eventually flourish, or maybe not, because business is tough and nothing's a certainty. But that's really the difference, if you will, between a Main Street type business. Most of those have predictable revenue, and even a startup, you can research and find what's logical in terms of whether my cafe is going to be able to sustain itself based on reasonable numbers that are probably researchable.
Right. So can you tell us maybe just about what one of your real success stories? Someone came to the CEDF, had an idea, how they helped them realize how to get it started, that sort of thing, and is there someone that, or some business that is a huge success?
Well, I have my favorite clients, as you can imagine, because of, the close association that has developed over helping them for 12 years. And, honestly, helping individuals through the crisis of COVID. But I'm thinking of a particular solopreneur who, is an occupational therapist who actually came to us before I was in the organization, but she was, functionally speaking, a startup. She had certainly worked in her profession previously, but we helped her, again, create her own clinic, and over time she's realized that, well, that's a pretty tough business because of her insurance reimbursements and things like that. I'm going to take a different track, and I'm going to develop intellectual property that's of value to my clients through the support systems and the schools and so forth, and the educators that need to help the children that she's working with. And she's developed that in a very impressive way. And there's a book coming out soon, is what I understand. So that's one that comes to mind right away.
That's great. That's great. And she's within the Connecticut area,
obviously. Yeah, in Stamford, Connecticut, actually.
We'll have to keep an eye out for her. What is the one thing that you can tell small business / entrepreneurs, people who are trying to get started, what is the one thing that you would advise them to do before they even start thinking about what line of business they want to go into and what it is they want to do?
I think what's universal is the necessity of having a very solid grounding in the financial aspects of business. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to go out and get a CPA license or a degree in accounting by any means. We have the fortune of modern technology and things like QuickBooks that will take away some of the stress and strain of that. I can personally testify that you can happily run a business for 23 years and hardly ever think of what a debit or a credit is, but you can still be in control of the finances of the business if you use the right tools. And the deficit that we see, I don't want to say universally, but it's pretty pervasive, is that people really don't have a basics grounding in the financial aspects of a business. And we've tried to mitigate that by the courses that we've put out, in financial fundamentals and what I would call scorekeeping. If you do not know how to keep score, it's not very pleasant to go to the bowling alley and have a game of bowling. Now, I realize nowadays they in fact keep score for you automatically on the screen, but I guess when I first was introduced to a bowling alley, it was a mystery to me how you put these little numbers on the pad and how you kept score. So I often give the example of, business owners are kind of like they're in a basketball game running up and down the court furiously. And then what if the scoreboard up above just kind of blinked out, and then all of a sudden no one really knew what the score was, but you kept running up and down and playing very hard. Pretty soon you wouldn't know whether you're ahead or behind or what the purpose of your work was. And that's kind of the situation that a lot of business owners have. They're not sure what the score of their own ball game is, but they know they're working very hard. Right. And as one of my one-time colleagues pointed out, sadly, he said that so-and-so is bankrupt, he just doesn't know it yet. So, yeah, small business it's a tough road to hoe, actually.
Yep, absolutely. And the business climate is more and more difficult.
Well, businesses, always have their ups and downs, sometimes by industry, but even within an industry that's sometimes tough, we see stars that are doing very well because of either good fortune or their great efforts. And then we see other times that there are businesses that should be actually very resilient based on their industry, but due to poor choices that sometimes the business owner makes, that their road's a little harder.
Do you find that once someone launches their business that, I would assume that they would continue to stay in touch with CEDF and have constant back and forth, perhaps.
Oh.
Is that the usual way it works with your clients?
Well, it's hard to say usual. At any given time, we have a couple of hundred clients, and I know many of our business advisors do retain close relationships with people that they've helped over the years, and people do call on them. Our effort really is to help the businesses grow to the stage where we can say they, quote, graduated, and now they can work with the bank that they've been working with, and they can secure financing, sometimes at a more favorable terms. And, that shows that the business has finally arrived when you're, quote, bankable. Mm-hmm. In fact, we do have many business owners that stay in touch with us. I can think of one in particular who was very successful with her business services operation, and is now on our corporation board, and was recently featured by a bank in their television and print advertising.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's great. Great. So that's a real graduation.
That really is a success story.
Okay. What's the special sauce, though, for CEDF?
Well, I think what really differentiates us is the effort that we put into our business advisory services. Across the United States, there are a lot of community lenders. Not all of them, have a Treasury certification of CDFI, but many do. There's about 1,200 CDFIs. They work in different areas. I would say about half of them work maybe only in housing. Another, let's say 40%, might only do small business lending like CEDF. And, all of them, I think, try to provide some degree of advice and, counsel, or it's, in the industry, it's termed technical assistance. Mm-hmm. We like to think we take it a step further, and this is how. First of all of our borrowers, we ask them to cooperatively meet with our business advisory team member once a month or so, because we want to help them stay successful. And all of our business advisors have a background of successfully having owned a small business. And so when you've actually paced the floor or worried yourself whether you're going to make payroll on Friday in the past, I think that creates a little bit of empathy that we can share with our borrowers to help them through tough times. So our business advisors, work across industries. They you would find that there are many similarities between industries, and so it's very easy to take the principles that you see in one place and apply them as principles elsewhere in management, marketing, and finance. And I would also emphasize that a business advisor is working in the emotional aspects of business ownership, which is sometimes kind of underrated. But even, long after COVID, sometimes, we have a need to dry some tears and help people put one foot in front of the other to make a go of it next Monday morning.
And keep moving forward.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
That's probably the biggest.
I think
the
so.
biggest challenge for everyone, right?
Well, sure.
About how many over the last? Can you even quantify over the last years that you've been with CEDF? How many businesses you all have helped get off the ground?
Oh my! I wish I was armed with appropriate statistics, but I'll plead ignorance on this. Only to say that at any given time we have about 200 borrowers. So people will have a loan, for 3, 4, 5 years, let's say, and they pay off, and sometimes they need additional financing for new ventures. Many of our borrowers have multiple loans with us because they've grown the business and they have substantial investments that they need to make, and they've responsibly worked with us as a lender, and they've demonstrated that ability. And so we're happy to support them on that next piece of equipment or some additional working capital for the plans or another location, whatever it might be.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I know that you've talked about your website, weteachsuccess.org, and that is
can be found through
www.cedf.org?
The cedf.com links to that also. And of course, we use the main website for what I'll call maybe more institutional purposes with lending and, the story of the organization and links to our annual report and things like that. But, the educational component is another important part of what we do. And, we're currently running and a kind of an incubator accelerator program in collaboration with the Entrepreneurship Foundation. It's at the downtown Bridgeport Library, couple Wednesdays a month for the next 7 months. And Mike Rohr is, I would consider him the dean of entrepreneurship here in the state of Connecticut, and he's leading that by using a textbook that he's written. And I think the important distinction there is that it's not just for those who are maybe trying to ideate or start a new business from scratch, but many times an existing business owner kind of got into things in a hurry, and they kind of missed some of those important principles about knowing who their market really is and what their value proposition is and things like that. And so we therefore invited everyone to come in because there's lessons to be learned and education to be had, even if you're down the road, maybe a few years.
Right. And anyone can take advantage of that?
Yeah, it's still open for registration. They've missed at this point the introductory session, but they can make up on that. And that's available on our website at cedf.com/training. So they can see our whole calendar of offerings there, and under the May entry, because we're still in the month of May, you'll see the wealth creation through business formation program that's shown there.
And that's at the downtown main library.
It's the main library in Bridgeport, around the corner from Housatonic Community College and across from Government Center. So it runs for 2 hours in segments, giving the participants time to work on whatever the courseware has for them, and I think the sessions are spread out every couple of weeks or so through, and it'll run through November, and there'll be accumulation. It will cap off, let's say, with a pitch competition also.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yes.
That'll be great.
Looking forward to it.
Well, we're almost at the end of our show. We have a couple of more minutes left, and I know we wanted to talk about that business incubator because I think there's probably a lot of people out in the listening audience who are really, really interested in figuring out what their next step is,
Sure.
where they want to go. And just to clarify, this business incubator is for people who have not yet started a business?
No, I would say it's for anyone who wants to learn the right way to do it, and that could be an existing business as well. And we have both enrolled in the course. We had, I think, 20 or so that were at the first meeting, and we look forward to anyone signing up. It's a free course, as is darn near everything that CEDF does. But there are other incubators, there are other accelerators around Connecticut. There are many opportunities in a small compact state like this. We're very fortunate that we have partners that we can work with that are there to help small businesses, especially the SBA partner organizations, which include the 6 SCORE chapters, which include the Women's Business Development Council and the many offices that they have around the state, and the Small Business Development Center that has, I think, about 18 full-time paid advisors that work with small businesses.
Great. Well, you certainly have created an opportunity for lots of people to put their thinking caps on and think about how they might create a new business for themselves, something new and exciting out there. I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And once again, that website where anyone can find this information.
Well, cedf.com for our lending programs, and a link to our calendar of educational programming, and you can jump on over to weteachsuccess.org from there also to see the other free resources.
That's great. Well, thank you again, Mr. Welk, for joining us. Fred Welk from the Community Economic Development Fund and he's a business advisor there. Thank you again for tuning into Soundview. Good night.